call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, March 9th, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome members of the community here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Dr. Hillman, do we have some items in the table file you can update us on?
We do. We have several items in the table file. We have an update on the MacBook Air laptop sale that the board approved in January of 2026. There are some minutes from the special school board meeting that was held on March 6th. There's an additional gift agreement, several personnel items, and a grant application.
Very good. Thank you so much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Right. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
Motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Amy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, motion passes. We do not have anyone signed up for public comment, so we will move on to item 4, announcements and recognition.
Yes, we have several announcements and recognitions this evening. Coming to the end of winter sports, just really an honor roll of success at the state level recently. So I want to congratulate the Northfield boys swim and dive team. They took third place in the state tournament. In addition, Will Radetsky captured the state title in the 200-yard freestyle, and Odin Bergs brought home the state championship in the 100-yard freestyle. So congratulations to our boys swim and dive team for another exceptional season. Talk about dominance. Congratulations to Kaylee Graber, who won her third consecutive state title at the State High School League Wrestling meet recently. So congratulations to Kaylee, just really a dominant person in that sport, and just so proud of her work. 4 students from Northfield Middle School and 3 students from Northfield High School performed at the 2026 Minnesota String and Orchestra Teachers Association Middle Level All-State Orchestra back in February. I want to congratulate Audrey Breen, Caitlin Sina, Armagon Nega, Robert Steed, Helena Holleran, Soren Perkins, Kaya Jacoby, and Yina Zhang was also selected as an alternate. So students in grades 7 through 9 perform in the ensemble with a select group of other students from across Minnesota. So thanks to Heather Olivier and Thomas O'Keefe and just everyone involved in that really wonderful orchestral event. We did hold our ACT testing, that's the statewide testing, on Tuesday, March 3rd. 221 juniors took that test, and they'll get their scores in the next few weeks. Registrations for summer community education programs open on Friday, April 3rd. Registrations can be completed online, by phone, or by visiting the Northfield Community Education Center. Scholarships are available to participate in community education programs. For more information, contact the NCEC. Incoming 6th grade students and their families are invited to attend an informational session at Northfield Middle School on March 19th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Parents will attend a presentation while students have the opportunity to meet their 8th grade web leaders and participate in some fun activities. We want to invite folks to join us for the All-District Band Concert. That's Monday, March 16th, and the All-District Orchestra Concert on Tuesday, March 17th. Both concerts begin at 7 p.m. and are at the Northfield High School Gymnasium. These are some of my favorite concerts of the year because you get to see the progression of our musicians from when they're beginning their instruments in 4th or 5th grade all the way to those who are just graduating in a few weeks. It really puts the entire music program in our district on display, something that we should all be very proud of. And speaking of being very proud of musicals, if you have not had a chance yet to attend Rock and Roll Revival, I'm sorry, the tickets are sold out. Maybe you can find someone who can get you a ticket, but I had a chance to attend over the weekend, and the 30th anniversary of this very special performance that we have within our school district. Just congratulations to the director, Ray Coudray, and everyone involved, the hundreds of students involved both on stage and behind the scenes. It really is a truly student-led production, and I've shared with people, I have several people who I talked to recently who this was their first, and I try not to oversell it. And I asked them, did I oversell it? And they said, no, you probably undersold it if everything is really a special event. So just congratulations to all the rock and rollers, something that we're really proud of here in Northfield for this just amazing performance. So
Absolutely.
3 more performances this week if you can find a ticket.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, item 5 is our discussions and reports. And first up, we have the Raider image proposal. Rally advisor Leah Sand and Rally student representatives Megan Colson, Kate Sand, Grayson Mosley, and Izzy Paulson will give an overview of the Raider image development process and present the image finalists tonight. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm Leah Sand, one of the rally advisors. I'll let them introduce ourselves. Izzy, unfortunately, couldn't make it because spring sports start today.
Hi, I'm Grayson. I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm a senior.
I'm Kate, and I'm also a senior.
Okay, we're here to talk about the Raider image. We're just going to go a quick overview of everything we've done, and then you can see where we've landed. So we're going to go through our slide set here. The first slide is, of course, the Northfield strategic plan, preparing every student. I know you've seen this, but we believe that this connects to community and partnership and a sense of belonging in our schools when we can have an image that represents who we are. So we will take turns talking about our process.
So the main reason we really wanted to bring an image to you all tonight is to show how we really feel like the school could get more connected and the community as well when we have an image and a visual representation of who we are. And if you see someone out of Northfield wearing our logo, you could be like, oh my gosh, it's a connection. So here's a little excerpt from a letter written to Dr. Hillman and Mr. Mahal, just showing how we feel like this mascot will improve our community and culture by bringing everyone together and that powerful state of I'm a Raider and you're a Raider too, and it'll unite us all.
This was our process and timeline of all the steps we went through to get to where we are today. So it started with that letter you just saw to Mr. Hillman, or Dr. Hillman and Mr. Mahal. And then there was a meeting in the summer of 2025 with Dr. Hillman and Mr. Mahal. And then on September 25th, we had a student meeting where all students could get together and just talk about the idea of a new mascot. And then from there, we opened up submissions for all students to submit mascot ideas and images they thought would be good. And then we got an image group, Raider image group together, and on November 4th, we reviewed all the submissions that were submitted in. And then we met again on November 24th, and we reviewed all the images again, and then we gave feedback to Dr. Hillman. And then we finally met on February 19th when we got our final two, which you will see later tonight. So that was our process.
So the Google form that people made submissions was actually open to everybody in our community. Anybody that heard us at the KYMN radio online or saw it in the Northfield News, or there were some other places where it was pushed out. There were 31 different submissions made by 25 unique individuals. So even though there were more submissions than some people submitted a variation of the same thing. If I remember correctly, nobody submitted two different kinds. So you could see there was a lot of different options of images that were submitted, from a cow to a raven to, there was a crest, more of I feel like a soccer emblem, I would think, or I don't know, a crest. There was some cowboys on a horse, fox, horse, another person. It wasn't really a cowboy. Raccoon. There was lots to choose from, is what we're getting at. So 31 submissions by 25 unique individuals, and then we started the real work of what does that look like for us?
We started with the first and second review, just making sure we would talk about all of them. And the first one, we just made sure that it worked in the guidelines that we set, so free of violence and racism, and that it represents all of us. And then we chose unique from Big Nine. We talked about if we liked it or loved it, kind of just getting a sense of what we liked the most or not. And 6 images kind of rose to the top from that first review. And then the second review, we talked about whether or not it looked good on a t-shirt or whatever, and whether or not did we not what was good about it or what was bad about it. Are there things we could change to make this specific image better with those 6 images? And then after that, the 2 images rose to the top, and we were left with these 2 images, the horse and the cow. And these 2 images both meet all of our submission guidelines, represents all free of violence, harassment, racism. It also connects to Northfield in a way, the horse is historic in the defeat of Jesse James, and it gives unity and courage, and the cow is the cow's college and contentment. So these were our last 2 in our final student review.
And that just brings us to where we are now. We have gone through the process of looking at all of these images as a student panel. There were about 19 sophomores to seniors that met with us at those images and offered feedback. And we had a lot of tough conversations about what it means to pick one image that represents Northfield High School. But I feel like along the way, we learned some things about who we are and who we want to be. And so the next steps are actually what happens next, to like where else do we share this, and how do we know what to do next, and how do we get this going, because we're really excited to have it at the school and potentially have it in the new building, and for teams to have something in addition to the N.
Okay.
I just want to take a moment to commend Leah and your team and the students. I had a chance to meet with these students a few times during the process, and I think they really had an opportunity to live in the board's shoes, actually, in a number of ways. They brought people in who disagreed with some of the perspectives and some of the thoughts that were brought forward. They managed that in a very professional way. In fact, I think many adults could learn from the way that these young women really helped mitigate disagreement and bring people together. I was just really proud of this process, and I'm really proud of the leadership that this group has shown. The group that is putting this forward is about leadership in athletics, and they have really a once-in-a-generation opportunity to be able to lead this conversation. And so we've had conversations about this before. We know this is, anytime you talk about this, we know it's challenging, but these young people just did an exceptional job of making sure that people knew about it. Your appearance on KYMN was fantastic. The article in the paper was really, really good. We had it in our district update, and they led this. They took critical feedback, they activated it, and they kept continuous improvement at the forefront. So I just want to compliment you on the exceptional way that you led this process.
Great to hear. That's fantastic. And I'm so glad that you poured in all of your time and effort to bring us those images tonight. I'm going to open it up to the board members if you have questions or comments. Would anybody on this side have a question? Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Quinnell, Northfield Raider, the only alumni on the board. Long career, many athletes. I mean, we're the Northfield Raiders. It's the reason the town is famous is because of Jesse James days. So a Raider is a cowboy on a horse. We defeated Jesse James. That's our theme. We're the third largest festival in Minnesota because of that. That's where we're from. I don't necessarily see a Raider and a horse, and I don't see a Raider and a cow. So, I mean, I was actually the last go-around that we did this. We had a huge committee, and we had a cowboy. It got down to the last vote. I was ready to vote for that. We came in and picked it apart. It wasn't gender neutral or neutral or whatever the thing was. I thought it looked pretty good. So I appreciate the time and effort you put into this, and I'll leave it at that.
Hey, Maggie.
I want to say thank you. It's really been a fascinating process to kind of see from the outside as it goes on. And I want to thank you for bringing such professional images. I know you have worked with Nuger to sort of get them finalized, but I think it's been really helpful for me to see these as kind of what they would look like, right, on a hat or a jersey. And I love the horse. I think it's wonderful. I feel like a horse is actually a really great animal to choose. They're athletes, they're therapy animals, they work, right? They're working. It's just such a versatile animal that I think, I don't know why more sports teams don't have horses, but I think that one for me does really remind me of Jesse James days. I mean, there are horses literally just walking down the street during that festival. So for me, it's a really excellent kind of translation of what happened, I think, was that 5 years ago, kind of bringing forth that idea and making it something that everyone can really get behind. So thank you.
So thank you all for doing this, because I know it's a big project. I was also here when we did it the last time around, and remember all the conversations, and it was a difficult process. So you've got to experience that as well. And I have a question for the girls, because I look at the cow and I really like the connection to cows, colleges, and contentment. I think that's a nice way of connecting it back to the town. But I worry about two things. First, cows are female. And second, so it's not gender neutral, but second, back in the day when I was your age, to be called a cow was considered an insult. And so I was wondering if you discussed that at all in your, in your conversations about what it would be like if people started calling you all cows.
No, that's a great point. That did not come up in our discussion. The biggest reason we thought the cow might be good is because it's super different from anybody else in like the big nine, which will go for like music and sports as well, and also like different than other people. Like just like in our state, there are no other cows. But no, that's a great point to bring up as well. Yeah.
I guess we did kind of bring up like we thought that a bunch of the words are like as the student brought together, we kept coming up with the word fierce. Like we want our mascot to like show that sports teams like we're good sport teams and we're fierce. So we did kind of talk about how the cow is like, we kind of were thinking of like a bull, but then that also kind of goes the other way. Like then that's like a male. So we kind of were talking about like we could add horns to that and it'd be more fierce and more of that, but we kind of like that's hard to go back and forth with.
Yeah, like I said, the connection is fun. Bull has its own problems. I could see some cheers from the opposing teams that might not be fun. So while I really like the connection and actually appreciate how you went away from the raid aspect, because I think our town always has this tension, and we went through it last time about do we really want to celebrate this violent act that happened or where 4 people died in a small town. So that was what we grappled with back in the day.
Again, to your
Jeff, I'm sorry. Amy's speaking, and then
that's
I'll call
fine.
on you in
It's
just a
the
bit.
defeat of Jesse James. Defeat.
Right. So the horse, I think, can make that connection in a way that is less attached to the Raiders, even though we say Raiders on there, and more attached to the day and to the celebration.
Thank you. All right, Corey?
Thanks for all the work you put into this. I think I want to commend you for that. I think it's a lot of great work, and I think it's incredibly important for this to be a student-led initiative. You are current students. You've talked to up-and-coming students and your peers. I think you understand the values of what Raiders mean in the 21st century better than anybody else. So thank you for bringing these images and going through that process. Like Maggie, I see a lot of positive attributes of a horse. In addition to the strength and the ability on the athletic side, horses are smart. So this obviously represents all activities, all Raiders. So I lean toward favoring the horse. Obviously, that's still reflective, as Amy said, of some of the culture within the community, but I think can also be pulled out and applied to multiple different activities and people. I also like on this slide at the end having different uses for the horse, having the horse be the primary anchor image, but I love it with the copy. I really like it in the circle. And then Leah, you had mentioned the crest option that was presented. I actually really like that. Obviously, it was a very different graphical approach, but I'd love to see even another option with this horse head if we go this route in place of or on a crest-like thing. So it could be used in multiple different ways, create a bunch of different cool ways to feature it on apparel, on the building. But I prefer the horse. One thing I will say, a little feedback is with the horse with the N on it. I feel like that's a little forced. I know that was maybe something came up through discussion, but otherwise I love it everywhere else. I know that's the only instance when it's on its own that has like kind of the N in the neck, but minor criticism. But otherwise, great work. Love to see what you've done here.
All right, anyone else? Okay, Ben.
I'll go last. Thank you. I'm sure this was an interesting process for you to go through. You can see that it stirs up emotion in people, right? Like they see in a logo, it tells you a lot what they think about themselves sometimes. I think it's interesting that we've come down to these two choices. What are the next steps? I mean, you talked about next steps in terms of gathering feedback and input. What does that look like to you all, especially to echo Corey's comments about getting student input? I think this is really a student-driven initiative, and how do you get that and advise us in terms of what's the preferred approach in this instance?
I'll speak. That's really part of the reason why we're here tonight is we're wondering what are the next steps. Like we're asking the school board tonight, what do we do next? Like we've come to this conclusion with these two. Are we going to put it out for community response? Are we going to put it out for just building response? How will we actually narrow it down to one? We felt like some feedback from this group would be the best option. I think.
Yeah, I think that the way that we've looked at this, Ben, is that wanting to present this, obviously this has been a communication or a conversation that the community has had for, nearly a year, right? Because we did have community feedback, after the radio show. I know you got some community feedback, and after the newspaper article, it's been in district updates, and I know it was also in the high school update. So our plan would be to ask the board to make a final selection. We think that this is a governance decision because it is an image that will be in all parts, of specifically the high school and throughout the school district. So wanting to make sure we brought it here in early March so that people had about 2 months, right, about 6 weeks. And so we'll certainly publish it, as the final two in our district updates. We can certainly work with the newspaper and get something in there as well. I'll talk about it on the radio tomorrow morning. And so I think at the end of the day, there's been quite a bit of feedback through this. And if the board would like us to get additional feedback, we can certainly do that. I think you've heard a pretty solid process here. And so it's in your court. So I would ask if we could make the decision one way or the other on April 27th. So that we can start working that. We're in plenty of time to be able to include it in the updated facility. But I've learned over time, if I give people a deadline, we get a decision one way or the other.
So I just wanted to ask about the next steps slide. Does this mean that you've already presented the image to Northfield Schools and Community?
These were some of the questions about like how do we do that? It was shared with the high school staff and non-licensed staff the other day just to make sure we're out. Like, they've seen this exact thing. They're informed, but I'm not sure about the other schools. Like how much does Bridgewater know? And so this is all. It should say next steps ?
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. And again, thank you for being here and presenting and for all your hard work on it. It was a big task, and I was very pleased to hear that you had something like 19 other students giving you input on that. So way to go. Right. Well, have a good night, and we'll get back to you.
And we'll help get it out, and we'll provide a vehicle for you to get feedback, and so we can work on that together this week. Sounds good.
Corey, did you have another item?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the group real quick. You have these two images in front of us. You're bringing forward what the committee and the group brought together. Do you have a preference between the two individually?
My personal favorite is the horse as well.
I like the horse too.
Yeah, I think we all like the horse. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, have a good night. Okay, next we have READ Act update and data review. Instructional systems specialist and district literacy lead Alicia Clary will update the board on the READ Act. Welcome.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here with all of you. So I'll start with the strategic plan as well. All of them are important, as we know, but I think today we'll really be talking about that all students are at grade level in reading and math by the end of 3rd grade and 6th grade, but I think the READ Act takes it one step further, and it says every year. All students will be reading at or above grade level every year. And so that's just what I'm here to talk to you about, the systems that are in place and that we're working on to do that work. The process is that we screen, and then we identify what the needs are, we intervene, and then we progress monitor, and we do that 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. So we just completed our winter benchmarking a couple months ago, and to get this done, we had a swarm team. So we had 4 retired teachers come in, and they worked alongside of our interventionists in our building literacy leads to get this benchmark testing done. So it was consistent, and it gave the teachers what they needed to then report to data days, which were led by the building principals, where we got to make action from this data. So the first test that we did, the group of tests is called early reading, and it's all from FastBridge. All of these tests are. So this is K-8. We use FastBridge testing. So the early reading reading shows us the foundational skills, so letter name, letter sounds, those kinds of things, and the mark moves fall, winter, and spring. So in the winter, we had about 36% of our students that had minimal risk, 31% low risk, 21% some risk, and 12% high risk. Now we react to those categories. It's not that means something to us, right? So we can say that minimal risk, strong tier 1 instruction should do the trick for those students. They might need enrichment, but we stay the course for them. Low risk students, same situation, but this is skill based, right? And so we act on the skills. If they're in some risk or high risk at data days, we sat down and we looked at who are these kids? Do they have something in place? Does it reflect their skill deficit? If so, great, keep going. If not, let's make that different. And then we put progress monitoring into place. So we're looking at skill level for our K through 3 students. We also look at the universal screening grades 1 through 5, that's CBM English. That's an oral reading fluency measure that we do for all of those students as well to see how accurate are they, what's their rate, those kinds of things. If, however, those scores come into us, we react differently. And so all of this was still talked about in data days. Our final measure is for all kids grades 1 through 8, and that's A reading. That's more of a general reading measure, which, again, if we see something happening in that, then we will go to that skill-based level. So that's just an overview of the winter benchmarking that took place. And then that drove us into data days. So we looked at all of the data, K-5 in the building, and decided what to do with the students, like I mentioned earlier. And we're continuing to progress monitor. So if we entered data days and we had their data, but we were like, we still don't understand quite why this score came up, then we might do some other diagnostics or something like that to get it down to the specific skill level for each student that was flagged to us in some way. Something new for that, a new diagnostic that the READ Act is now saying that all students 4 through 12 need to have is the CAPD Read Basics. And we are just starting that process with them now. We've tested our 4th and 5th grade students who are below a benchmark to find out what skill deficits they had in those foundational skills that are usually, done being taught in a scope and sequence by the end of, say, 1st or 2nd grade. But some students need more time with that. So the CAPD Read Basics gives us a way to see what foundational skill deficits they have. And now we're working together through the MTSS team and all these other teams to decide what do we do with those students and how do we meet their needs. So that's an ongoing mission for us. And it's done during MTSS, right? So we have building MTSS meetings where the principal's there, the school psychologist is there, there's teachers, and we're talking about data in that way. Then there's district level MTSS where we're coming together with principals and other stakeholders like that. And then we also meet with the building literacy leads. We have literacy leads that meet with me, and then they go back to the building. So we have a lot of different ways that this data is talked about. And also the principals meet on Thursdays, and so I'm there to talk with them if they have questions at that time. So that's our diagnostic. Another thing that the READ Act states is necessary is to have staff trained in the science of reading, and Northfield has gone above and beyond with that for sure. Right now, for phase 1, we have 134 staff that have completed science of reading training, either letters or OLA, which is phenomenal. So when I say that we're at these MTSS meetings and all these things, we're talking to teachers who understand the science of reading. So they're ready to act on those foundational skills and they're knowledgeable. So the conversations and things that we've had is just exceptional. We come from a lot of hard work's already been done in this district up to this point. So the READ Act just kind of rolled very nicely into a system we already had in place. EA training, this year alone, I've trained 92 staff here in our district, and we have a couple more, but that's a lot of educational assistants who are now trained in the science of reading, so how they interact with students on a daily basis is informed in a different way as well, so that's exceptional. And then next year is phase 2, where 17 of our secondary staff will be trained in the science of reading, so that's coming next year for them. And I have up here on my slide a big thank you to HCI, because all along the way they've supported us with treats for our letters training or for the EA training, and they've always been there to just support us. So thank you to HCI as well. In the next steps, we are piloting a knowledge building curriculum right now. And what that means is we've kind of broken our elementary day into 3 parts. We have foundational skills, small group, like differentiated instruction for that extra practice at whatever your level is, and then knowledge building. And that's what we needed to kind of bring up to speed in our district. So for knowledge building, we piloted Wit and Wisdom first. And what that means is it's going to incorporate writing, vocabulary, and then any of that syntax and things like that into one curriculum, so we have a backbone for it. We hope to attach like social studies standards to it and things like that, but that will be our that's what we're looking for right now. And then we'll continue to build professional learning into that PLC structure. So we are trying to, as we learn with our curriculum, we kind of want it to be in real-time learning for our teachers. And then we're going to continue to support the diagnostic assessments that we continue to do throughout the district. So that's where we're at for the READ Act. Lots of good work happening, and we're just getting going. So sorry, that was a little kind of quick. Do you have questions?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and
Sure.
well laid out information for us. Can you just remind me on 134 staff completing phase one, what percentage is that of staff that need to complete that? Do you know, or
We have all of our staff that I know of.
34 out of 134?
I believe, right, and that's always a kind of a moving mark, but I believe that for phase one, we are looking really good.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
So the READ Act identified particular positions in different phases, and so we have completed phase one of everyone who's currently on staff. They are certified, if you will. That's not technically the term, but they have completed that training. EAs or non-licensed staff, this was the year that they were required to be trained.
Yep.
So that part is becoming complete. And shockingly, I'm just going to make everybody really surprised, but the department has changed it from time to time after we've started. And so thanks to Alicia and to the team, Alicia is a trained facilitator, and it's such an asset to have Alicia in the district just because she's Alicia, but having that trained facilitator in the district allowed us to respond to that in a way that other districts who didn't have that may not have had the opportunity. So we are on track. Next year we'll have the phase two folks, and then we'll be done with that part of it. I'm sure there'll be more to come.
That-
Thank you, Alicia. Anyone else have question or comment? Okay, Amy?
Thank you, Alicia, for the nice presentation. I have just two kind of comments.
Sure.
My first question is, I know this is a different type of testing, but the benchmark that we have, number 3, is reading at grade level in grades 3 and 6. So, and here we're not looking at grade level per se, we're looking at risk level. And I was wondering if you see any way of sort of correlating grade level and risk level to give us.
Yeah, so the risk level means that they are at risk to not meet that grade level benchmark by the end of the year. So that's what the risk level means, but they're still skill-based and things like that. The CAPTE Read Basics test gives us a direct correlation to MCA scores, so we are working closely with that company to get those kinds of measures, so we do still have that. But FastBridge, those risk levels show their risk for meeting the end of the year benchmark in that grade level. That's kind of how it's written.
So if we're looking for 80%, which I know is a stretch, but
Yeah,
if
so
we're looking for 80%, and then we
low or, that
so,
low risk.
So it would be minimal and low. We add them together and we go, well, we have 67. We're getting close.
Getting close.
Yes. All right. So that's good. And then the other thing I thought was interesting when I looked through your beautifully colored graph is that our benchmark says specifically 3rd and 6th grade. And you look at our 3rd and 6th grade scores, and they're the two lowest grades as far as some risk and high risk. Am I saying that right? So that they have they're doing the best of all the grades.
And yes, and according to that test, they are. One thing about that is for, we look at nonsense word fluency in the bar graph that you're talking about. It's for A reading, and that's correct. But another part, we look at nonsense word fluency, and that's not normed for 2nd and 3rd grade, but the state says that it could be an indicator of reading difficulty. So we are looking at that too. So the data might read a little bit differently because it's not normed for them. So we do use the data in different ways.
Could you explain just a little bit about what nonsense word fluency is? Because I think when people in the public hear this, right, there are people who are watching this really important presentation. You're presenting interim data, right, that is attempting to be predictive so that we are able to continue to intervene, right, before that summative assessment at the end of the year. And I think sometimes people, nonsense words, why would that matter? But the truth is, nonsense word really can be a clue to unlock reading success. Would you just describe that for people, please?
Right. some of these reading difficulties, have nothing to do with IQ, right? You can be very intelligent and still struggle with this reading. So a lot of times kids can memorize a lot of words, right? And it looks like they're a fluent reader, but that has limits. You can only memorize so many words and that'll start to slow you down later, right? So the nonsense word fluency is just a way for us to kind of slow down that memorized word calling kind of situation and make it so they have to use their, phonics skills. They have to use those foundational skills to sound that out or to figure out what that word is when they're not connecting it to an actual word that they would know. So that's what we don't teach to that. It's just a way to measure that skill.
Very good. Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Did you have
no,
one more?
I was just saying I was trying to read into it that for whatever reason, the third grade and the sixth grade was getting more attention and lowering their risk, but you're saying,
I'm saying they are, and they're doing great.
okay, great, thank
Yes.
you.
Anyone else? Question, comment? All right. Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.
Alicia, sorry. Okay. Item C is our proposed 2026-27 construction fund budget, and Director of Finance, Val Mercerf, will present the proposed 26-27 construction fund budget. This will be an item for individual action at our May 11th board meeting. Welcome, Val.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So we are the exciting recipients of a construction fund again. So the 2024 election had positive results, and so we are going to talk about what we're doing with that money and how we track it in the system. So as you know, we like to start with the strategic plan, and really I would say the exciting part about this project is it hits so many of our strategic commitments. It's going to pretty much enhance all of them, which we're excited about, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. So in a non-shocking turn of events, the construction fund has to be separate and restricted, which is a pretty common strategy for school finance. So what happens in this fund is we are selling bonds based on what the voters approved. Any of the proceeds from the bonds go into a separate account. Any interest earned on that money stays in that specific account and can be used for project cost. And again, the project costs are only what the voters approved. So it's very tied together, and we have to make sure that we're staying within that, what we asked for the voters, which is why we spent a lot of time wordsmithing the actual question that goes to the voters to make sure that we have enough leeway to get the project done without providing, misinformation. So I think everyone is super aware of this, but just in case you're not, what did the voters authorize and what's actually going to be in this fund? So all three questions were passed. The first question is the $120,000 addition, a music addition, and then demolition of the DHM and S wings, and then renovation of basically everything else that's existing in the building. And so the total construction cost is about $77 million, and the total project cost is $95.8. Construction is exactly what it sounds like. Actual constructing the building. Project means all of the designing, the architect fees, and the extra things that come together to make it actually happen. The second question was the expanded gymnasium. So again, 15.7 and 18.7. And then construction and installation of a geothermal. So those are the three things that we can spend these funds on. So with a grand total of about $121.6 million. So in terms of timeline, we have been in the design phase for what feels like a long time, but December of 24. So basically we started this right after the election results. Through March of 25. That's when the core group came together and we kind of made all of the purpose statements and things we wanted to see in this process. And now we've been in design development. So that was user groups April through September. And after we got all of that kind of more itemized feedback, when I say we, I really mean Wold and Knudsen are putting this together, is the construction document. So we've been in that phase since October. The bids for the project are out right now. which is exciting and a little nerve-wracking. Bid opening will be on March 26th. There are several different packages and things happening with that process, but once we have the bids, obviously we're going to bring that to the board for approval, and that's really the kickoff to construction. And so construction is slated to start basically the day after school gets out. So you will see construction happening this summer. So I rarely have great pictures for my presentations, but this is one where pictures were abundant. So just in case anyone hadn't seen them, I wanted to make sure we included some of the updates. This will obviously be the cafeteria. This is a rendering from the media center and a view of the expanded gymnasium. So that's very exciting. There are many more pictures on the website for those who are interested. In terms of revenue, it is relatively straightforward. We sell a bond, we get the money, and then it's any interest that's on top of that. And so initially with our funding projection, as you know, we like to be very conservative. And with what was projected prior to the election to what we are projecting now with our current bond sale and our upcoming bond sale, and then obviously the very generous donations, $2 million of that is from Carleton in their historic pledge. We have received all $2 million of that, just so the board is aware. And then basically we have about $4 million more than we had originally projected. And again, all of that can go right back into the project to make sure that we're getting the best products and quality for the project. And it is also a great buffer in case there's some unknowns. Anytime you're doing renovation and tearing into existing walls and replacing existing systems, there's likely things that are going to come up that we did not anticipate. So having that extra cash flow will be helpful to make sure that we stay on budget. And this is the draw schedule. So for construction, everything happens on a monthly billing cycle. So all the contracts will get drawn up after the board approves the bids, and then they're billing based on a percentage of construction, basically. And so the gross billing is what's currently projected. Again, this could change depending on how things go. If things get slowed down or sped up, it could vary, but this is their current projection. And we work with Wold and Knutson, the three of us, to kind of come together on that estimate based on their experience doing similar projects. So $39.5 million is what we're projecting to spend over the next fiscal year, so July to June, 26 to 27. The retention is actually a requirement in these construction processes. We have to retain 5% by law. So they bill us and we retain 5%. And then at the very end of the project, if they have met all of our requirements and qualifications to all the specifications, then we will pay them the final 5%. So we'll get, invoiced for $39.5. That's what will show up as expenditures, but actually cash going out the door in terms of payments will be that net billing of the 37. So, and then the cumulative, because this is now year 2, which seems crazy already, will be upwards of $50 million in where we're at for expenditures. So in terms of the financial summary, again, it's pretty straightforward. 24-25, we had our first bond sale, the first $1 million. In 25-26, our only revenue has been the interest that we're projecting to earn and the additional $1 million from Carleton. Our projected expenditures this year is about 13.5. Again, that 39.5 for 26-27. We are projecting to sell our next bond in May of 27. So that's why that's included here. I actually had to pause when I was putting this budget together and realize, yes, that is when we said it is, and it's already happening next year. So time feels like it goes pretty fast, but there's lots of good things happening. So in terms of this year, again, we're projecting to end this year with about 27.8 with the additional bond sale. Then we'll end next year with about 70. And that is the remaining we will have for the rest of the construction period, plus whatever interest we continue to earn. So that is how it's phasing out right now. But overall, again, it's a pretty straightforward methodology to put together, but there can be a lot of flux as we get into construction and how everything comes together. But we'll, again, if it's dramatically different than what I projected, we'll bring back a revised budget like we have in the past. So that was pretty quick, but any questions that the board has?
Well, and again, that'll be an item for action May 11th. Do board members have a question, clarification question at this time? Okay, thanks, Val.
Thank you.
And then our next item is the financial forecast follow-up. And that will be Val and Dr. Hellman presenting. A timeline of this process for the renewal of the operating levy is attached, and the board renewal of an operating levy using the same conditions as originally approved by the voters is permitted by Minnesota Statute 126C.17.
Yes, so we are just making sure that this is brought back at each board meeting so that we can make sure the public is up to speed about what we are discussing. And so I'm just going to pull up the document that we've had in the board agenda for some time. We've also shared this throughout the community. I also want to point out to board members that we had talked about how we can make sure that the option for the board renewing the operating levy is shared with taxpayers. And so this yellow postcard was, we know at least one taxpayer got it today in their mail. So this was a postal patron postcard. You got yours too. So it's the notice of the public hearing on March 19th. It has a QR code and directs people to the website for additional information. So just showing that we have followed through on the things that you have asked us to do. So again, we just want to bring back and help make sure that people know where we're at. Minnesota Statute 126C.17, subdivision 9B, to be specific, permits locally elected school boards to renew existing operating levies under the same conditions one time that was originally approved by the voters. And so Val and I are recommending that the board consider using its statutory authority to renew the 2017 operating levy as part of the budgeting process. Did you have something to weigh in on? Okay.
I do, but I was going to let you do your
Okay,
piece
I
first
just,
and
you
just
were
add
looking
to
like
it.
you were leaning in, so okay,
No,
I'll,
I'm just being ready.
I will continue on. So I just want to make sure that the board and the public know why we are asking the board to renew the operating levy now. The levy does expire at the end of fiscal '28. It represents $9 million of revenue, 13% of the overall revenue. We now have this new tool that the legislature passed and the governor signed that allows locally elected school boards to renew an operating levy by board resolution. Forgive me, I'm excited about it. Resolution, not revolution. And again, what we really think is this provides fiscal stability for the district. And we're now in that statutory timeline allowed for by the statute, so that you can renew the operating levy by board resolution during this time frame. As we've said before, we know that around 97% of the operating levy renewals from 2016 to 2024 did pass. This was one of the reasons that the legislature did make that change, both to provide stability for school districts and also to relieve school districts of some of that burden of the renewal process. And again, just want to make sure that we identify for people that in Northfield, for fiscal 26-27, this was an operating levy of $2,249.44 per pupil. It has an annual inflationary increase added each year, and it would be extended for a period of 10 years. So I'm also going to show the timeline here. We've been talking about this at every board meeting, but people do come to this at different times. Really, the next big step would be that public hearing on March 19th. That would be held 6 to 8 p.m. here in the district office gymnasium. For those of you watching, it's the old Longfellow School, just to make sure everybody knows it's in the gymnasium. Enter in the back, door number 5 is where we'll have people enter. And when people come, we would ask that you try to come for the entire time. It will be a pretty standard process that we use. Val and I will give a brief presentation about the operating levy, why it's important, why we're bringing it forward. We'll have people go into breakout rooms, and board members and administrators will be in those breakout rooms so that members of the public can offer their feedback to you as you weigh this particular decision. Then we'll come back and allow people for a public comment style opportunity for them to share directly with all board members what their perspective is. And then we will move from there. So again, we're looking at asking you to consider voting on this on April 27th. And now, Val, you told me to keep going, and you've got something to add.
Oh, you did great. Make sure. I really wish we would fix the light on this. No, you covered everything. I just wanted to reiterate, we did verify how much the election costs for 2024, and it was about $53,000 for the district. And so just reiterating that really the intent of the legislature is knowing that the vast majority of these pass is saving those resources for the district to make sure we can continue to put dollars in the classroom. So that's all I had to add.
Yeah, I think it's important that that $53,000, that was from our 2024 election. A little bit of was a bond referendum as opposed to an operating levy. The large, the majority of that there are some legal things that we have to do. We have to pay the attorney to write the language, if that makes sense. We have a responsibility to make sure that we educate the public, and we know, and when we are committed to going for these things in even year elections. So we know that it costs some money to make sure that the public has the information that they need. The time frame is really crunched a bit because you can't look at election day. You actually have to look at the opening of early voting. So there's a compressed time frame, which means there's more communication that has to happen in a shorter amount of time. A very small portion is what we actually pay to the counties, right? We have information from what we've paid for the, that's only around $4,000 in total. We don't anticipate, based on our discussions with the counties, significant change in that for this year. But it's all of those things that come together. It's making sure that we are publishing it in the paper and we are communicating appropriately through brochures and postcards and things like that. So we know there were some questions and just some discussion about the cost, and so we're just bringing those items forward for you tonight.
Very good, thank you. Board members, do you have questions or comments? Jeff?
Yeah, typical Northfield for levies, they pass. This is about 17% of our budget. It's $9 million. I think that you need to ask permission from the taxpayers and take it to the public for a vote.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, question or comment? Okay, Amy.
I just want to encourage all the public who's out there, and if they're listening to this, to whatever side you're leaning toward, to please come to our meeting and hear about it and talk to us so we get as much input as possible before making this decision.
Good. All right, Ben.
Yeah, just a reflection. I remember going through the initial MSBA board training, and at that time, I think it was 2022, because this law was passed in 23, I believe, in the 23 session. So, at that time, they pointed out, school boards don't actually have levying authority where they have to go to the voters, and this law actually changed that. And I think if you go back and look at the testimony around this law, it was really largely because every operating levy passed, almost. Yeah, the renewal, I should say, passed. I think it was 87 out of 90 or something. Don't quote me, but close to that amount. And I think the community elects the board as part of a representative democracy. So I will just leave it at that and recognize that there's certainly an efficiency to not having to expend $50,000 to reach a foregone conclusion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else at this time? Okay, we're on to item E, which is our superintendent search update, and we'll have Board Clerk Maggie Epstein will give a recap of the special school board meeting that we held just on Friday, March 6th.
Great, thank you. On Friday, March 6th, the board held a special meeting to plan the search for our next superintendent. At the meeting, we finalized the vacancy brochure, which will be posted tomorrow. The brochure describes our schools and our community, and it outlines the agreed-upon salary range and includes the specific leadership profile sought by this board. Applications for the position are due by April 7th, after which the board will hold another special meeting on Thursday, April 16th, to determine our finalists. We've scheduled the first round of interviews to begin at 4 p.m. on Friday, April 24th, and continue at 3 p.m. on Saturday, April 25th, with the final round of interviews taking place on Wednesday, April 29th, starting at 4 p.m. Those are all here in the district office boardroom and open. An updated search timeline is going to be posted on the district website soon. We also discussed how to include stakeholders and ensure public engagement during the search process. We authorized MSBA to hold search preview meetings. Those will be with district leadership to answer their questions and outline the search process. In addition, a public input survey will be available in both English and Spanish from March 10th, that's tomorrow, through March 22nd. And we strongly encourage parents, community members, business owners, students, and other stakeholders to complete the survey before the deadline, as we'll consider this feedback during the selection process. Lastly, the board determined 2 initial screening questions that will be included in the application to help us identify the best candidates. I also want everyone to know that MSBA will be hosting a virtual Q&A session this Friday, March 13th, from 4 to 5 p.m. Members of the public are invited to join live to ask questions, but the recording will be made available for viewing online throughout the search process. The minutes from that special meeting, which I just described, are available in the table file tonight. And like I said, the updated search timeline and the vacancy brochure will be posted tomorrow.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent recap. I'll open it up if board members want to add anything to it, but I think Maggie did a great job of recapping that, and the minutes, of course, are available. Wait, no. Thank you so much. Okay, item F is our district committees report, and Dr. Hemming will review all the district advisory committee meetings that were held on March 2nd.
So I'm just going to give a really high-level overview of the approach. So we have used this, what I would call the grand committee structure for the last couple of years, where we bring a number of committees together to meet on the same evening. Part of that is to have the community see that other members of the community are there to provide input. As you know, our district committees really have been one of the vehicles that we have used over the last 10 or 15 years to be able to secure feedback from people in the community about topics that are important to the board. We don't give those committees homework. We don't ask them to do things outside of the committee. They generally aren't committees that make recommendations, but they're a feedback loop that the board has used for some time. I think over the years, we've found them valuable, and we have been able to engage people in a different way than we normally can. So we had a number of committees that met that evening: our communications committee, our finance committee, our equity advocacy committee, our activities committee, our special education advisory committee are the ones that met that evening. And so people have the opportunity to come, they get to hear some information from each of the leaders in those areas, and get to offer feedback about what we are doing and what they might like to see us do next. Just like anything else, different committees have different levels of engagement, and so we had very varied attendance based upon each committee. But each committee stayed through almost the entire time, all the way through. There's one committee that ended early. People had an opportunity to provide their feedback on those subjects. And as we move forward, that was our last committee meeting of the year. This year we had 3. Some of these committees do meet more than that. So for example, finance meets 4 times a year, and so they'll have another meeting coming up later this spring. As we move ahead, I would encourage the board to think about this committee structure, and is it the right structure for us as you move ahead to what's next? It's been successful in many ways, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for growth and improvement. And so if you still see this as a valuable feedback loop, I'd encourage you just to think about how we continue to try to recruit people to be part of those committees. What are the important tasks or important discussion points that we ask community members to provide for us? And then understand that some committees may run the course, right? We have committees now that we did not have 10 years ago. We don't have committees now that we've had in the past as well. So just encourage the board as we move ahead to think about, is this the right structure for the kind of feedback loops across these kinds of committees? Just want to thank all the leaders who facilitated the meetings, thank the board members for their participation, thanks the community for showing up. Some really great discussions at each of those committee meetings last Monday, and just that's the report for this evening, but encourage you to think about, is that the strategy for the future? And certainly open it up to board members who sat in on those committees that evening. If you have some highlights you'd like to share, you certainly can.
Sure. So I was a part of the communications committee, and I just wanted to say that it actually moves me sometimes how involved the Northfield community is and coming to these meetings and really sharing their time and energy. And yeah, it was a great conversation, and I really want to thank everyone who's part of that group.
Thank you. Anyone else comment on the committee night? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, item G is a later school start time discussion on this process. I wanted to bring it to the board and to our regular meeting. We have, as board members, very limited opportunities where we can have a kind of discussion without calling a meeting and posting it for the community to be present to hear that discussion. So obviously, this is just a discussion. It's not an item for action. We're in the middle of a process where we are gathering information about a later start time in our district. We have coming up a work session on April 2nd, and then a community meeting as scheduled for public input May 4th. So those would be the next two meetings, and then after that, our timeline shows that the board members will continue to discuss this topic at our regular school board meetings, and so that's already on our schedules. What I want to point out that something that's already been alluded to regarding the educating the public and setting up meetings for the community to hear on something like our levy, there's hidden costs to that. Labor, somebody is organizing the things, somebody is gathering the materials. And so I just want to point out that while we have the two meetings that I think we could, as a board, lift and be able to have that discussion in those upcoming meetings, we also have high school reimagined meetings. We have a bid meetings, a community forum for the levy. We have our superintendent search, as well as two elementary schools, principal searches, and of course, our regular meetings. And the last thing I'll add before I open it up for discussion is that just on our superintendent search calendar are 5 additional meetings, mostly in April. So we'll see our work session happen April 2nd, and then 5 meetings in April, and then the May 4th public input meeting, as well as a special meeting May 4th for the search process. So I feel that the board can lift that, but I also recognize that there are a lot of meetings, and that means that somebody is doing work to support those meetings. So I just want to get a sense of your level of commitment to continue talking about this important topic. And I know, Amy, that you have been involved before, and you have some very concrete thoughts about the subject. And so I'm going to let the rest of the board members speak, and then I'll let you wrap the discussion. All right. So, and of course, if you don't want to comment anything, that's fine too. I just want to get a sense of how to move forward with this important topic. So, do you want to go first, Meg?
I guess I'm still formulating my thoughts, but I appreciate that we are having a lot of extra meetings now, especially in March and April. At the same time, I just heard another report about teens and sleep and how bad it is, and it seems like it's getting worse. And so I guess I'm still of two minds, and maybe would be okay with slightly delaying some of these meetings, maybe having a kind of focus on it in the summer, but I wouldn't want to wait too long, in part because I think it is really important to give families time to prepare. And I think that has been kind of a goal all along of why we started it now. Maybe aligning a new start time with kind of the new high school, or newish high school. So yeah, I would be open to pushing it back, but not too far.
Sure, I appreciate those thoughts. And again, we're just in the middle of discussions. We haven't decided anything. We're still gathering information, and our public input is so important to us. Anybody else want to add a comment on this topic of committing to continuing to talk about later start this spring? Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth in my own thinking on this, thinking, as we bring on a new superintendent, is this something that person should have some voice in and weigh in? I think as we've talked through this, changing people's schedules is a contentious issue, right? And that change will be difficult, even as people recognize the benefits of it. So, I think it's been really informative to go through the work sessions that we've had starting back in November, December, or something like that. I think a lot of work's been done in that space, especially looking, I think, at like transportation costs and things like that. So much work is underway. I think the other side of the argument is that allowing the board to stick with the timeline that we have here and make that decision, before the new superintendent starts, has some benefits to that person as well. They can come in and just say, well, that was the decision at hand. Now that's something I have to implement. What I've heard in the conversations is that, I think we're all aware of the benefits of that change, and that change will come with some potential budget implications. I think that's probably where, some of the more of that conversation needs to happen. To me, we're kind of riding the roller coaster up already. Like there's no easy way off. I'd rather just kind of make it to the top and keep going and get that decision made in the timeline that we've laid out here, just for the reasons that I've laid out.
Okay, thank you. So you're staying on the timeline that we have. Good. Jeff, do you have any comments?
Well, the last time we looked at this, it was obviously the couple $100,000 transportation costs, maybe we're right into the 50 on that. So the pros and cons of doing that, and obviously we're talking about there's the before 8:30 crowd, and there's the after 8:30 crowd. But I think it's just as important as when you get out of school earlier, and then you're just keeping kids longer. But I mean that's so it's when you're getting out. So I mean you have to just, I think if you phrase it and we necessarily keep going, I don't think it's necessarily urgent at an immediate that it couldn't be delayed. But I mean, as long as we're doing all the work, I mean, so I don't know. We'll kind of see still how that goes as far as the final decision.
So you feel like you're on the fence about it, or you feel more like we should delay or stay on track?
Well, even on the first time, I don't think from the first go around look at it, I mean, my opinion necessarily hasn't changed. If you're looking at $250,000 for transportation, and you're sooner or later gonna make a change, what are the contributing factors? And there's something about that, the data, if it's not after 8:30 or,
Yeah.
So I mean, I could be, when we start school is like 50, it's 7:50. So, I mean, what does even a half an hour do? So we haven't talked about the.
Right, so there's still more to learn, you're right, and that's why we don't have a decision. So do you feel comfortable with the timeline that we have on top of the other meetings that we're going to do ourselves, and also ask community members to join in on meetings? Do you feel good about
Well, it's a
continuing
lot
the
of
discussion
stuff. I
now?
wouldn't call it urgent, but if people want to move forward on it and make a decision, I don't see any reason not to.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Right, Corey?
All right. Similar to Maggie, I'm kind of two minds. I could see it both ways, and I'm okay with either way, but I'll just present some thoughts here. So I think we had talked about implementation if we make changes taking effect the 28-29 school year. So we're talking about 2.5 years out from now. So if we delayed this conversation till the fall, say, that's still plenty of time to go through the process if we choose to do something, educate people, obviously include people in that conversation, but then if we implement something, allow for people to make changes ahead of time for any effect it may have on home lives and dropping off kids, work, the whole thing. In terms of the cost, I know when we had our work session, we worked through a lot of different scenarios. There's a lot of scenarios that could still be worked out. That would be maybe potentially cost neutral. Certainly, I think there's agreement among most of us that the science shows that pushing school back is good. It's just logistically, can we do it? Does it make sense for our community, given that being 178 square miles, a lot of rural students, want to make sure everyone has a fair shake at getting to school at time, get enough good sleep. So there's a lot of stuff to still be felt out, which, as we have laid out here, there'd be a lot of opportunity for those discussions. So the cost piece, we have to figure out if there is a cost piece associated with it. So I'm not concerned about that today. I was of the mind that pushing us to the fall would be okay. I think there is value in having the new superintendent have a voice in it, but I also see having them come in with a clean slate and having one less thing to worry about as well. But given the length of time we have until we would consider implementing this, and of course that's ultimately our decision, could be 29/30 if we wanted to. We could push it off. I'm not suggesting we push it off. I'm saying, can we table this for 6 months potentially, since we do have all these things you listed, Claudia? But and then I think you made a good point, Claudia. I think the board can meet the moment. We just show up and discuss, and hopefully hear from people occasionally and have to think about it. There is staff that has to do work, and it is a particularly heavy time the next 2 months. There's multiple transitions going on within the district, so there's certainly having to capture some of that institutional knowledge that will be leaving across the district. That gives me some pause too, to make sure those folks have the time to do what they need to do to capture what they need to capture and train other people. So I truthfully could go either way. I see validity in each option. But I would say if we choose to push it back, that we commit to having this conversation carry out in kind of the same length of time. We're looking at 2 months. So if we kick this back off in October, making sure we make a decision by December,
Fair.
and that still gives families a year and a half plus, should we make a change.
Right, should we make a change? Good, thank you for your thoughts on that. Okay, Amy?
I'm glad you brought this up for discussion. I think there is a lot that we're asking of ourselves this spring, but sometimes you come to parts in life that are just extra busy. My preference would be to push ahead and make the decision sooner than later. I really liked Ben's metaphor of a roller coaster. I think we're like halfway there. We've done half the work so far. And the reason why I'd like to continue now is because we still have Dr. Hillman here, and he has 10 years of experience and 10 years of connections and 10 years of insights into how our community works and how people work. He also has 10 years of goodwill that he's developed within the community, where I think people trust him. And I think that's really important too. So that is ideal. We also have the other principals who are leaving, who may have insights as to how it would affect their elementary schools. So I hate to lose their knowledge. I also think it's unfair to give such a big question to a brand new superintendent. I started at about the same time as Matt did on the board, and I have seen Matt grow into his role, and we all take everything that Matt does for granted because he just does it so well. And I remember early on, though, he was learning, and he still did a great job, but he didn't do as many things initially. And I think we're already asking a lot of a new superintendent, and we need to give that superintendent at least a year to get up to speed, and just to get the normal things done. So my preference would be to have the discussion and make a decision. And if we do decide to go with a later start time, then we do it with the 28-29 school year. I mean, that seems like we have a lot of lead time, and then we give the project over to the new superintendent to implement it and not have to rely on him to do that in addition to everything else he's trying to learn to do right away.
Right, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that, Amy. Thank you to all of you for giving me some sense of where you're interested in heading with this conversation, and I will process that and give us an update this next time that we meet. Corey.
I just had a quick question concerning May 4th, since I know we have another meeting that day. This would be scheduled for like 7 to 9 probably then? Okay. Thank you. If we move ahead with it.
Yeah, we'll push it. Good. All right. Next up is our consent agenda. Is there anything, as a reminder, there was some,
One additional thing in the table file about the MacBook.
see the table.
Just
Okay.
We have an item for.
Okay,
MacBook
so
Air
we
sale.
have item E is our laptop sale update.
All right. So I'm going to give you an unfortunate update today. So in January, the board approved the bids for the sale of the MacBooks. This is the fourth time we've run this process, nearly identically in 8 years. And after that, the devices were picked up January 29th. And unfortunately, the check that the company gave us bounced, was returned insufficient funds. So the original bid was 142,000. So that's a pretty significant problem. We did obviously reach out to the company promptly, called and emailed. We ended up communicating with the actual CEO rather than the person who had solicited the bid. We have to date received 50,000 of the 142, but they continue to miss deadlines of promised funds, and we are at the point where we don't believe we're going to get further funds. So we have already filed a police report. We did also file an insurance claim with our insurance, and we are in consultation with our attorney about what our next steps are in terms of resolution to get the remaining funds. So just know that that's where we're at. We will also be filing it with the Office of the State Auditor, which is a requirement in statute. But it's an unfortunate circumstance. We also have several things that we already will plan to do differently in the future. But I just wanted the board to know that that's where we're at with this situation. And we will continue to follow up to get resolution the best we can. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board members have about that.
Thank you, Val, for that update. It is unfortunate and disappointing, but I know that you and the rest of the team did and are doing everything you can to restore the situation. And it is what it is at this point. We'll keep hope, but we also have action that we can take moving forward. Dr. Hellman.
Yeah, I just want to just say that we have several times over the years really championed this process that we have used successfully. Several other times, we typically are able to pay an entire year of the next lease payment with the money that we get from these sales. It's been a very solid process for us, but we really are committed to our strategic commitment to communication that says we communicate effectively and transparently with all stakeholders. So when we tell you that things have gone well in the past, when it doesn't go well, we also need to tell you. And so we feel deep regret over this, and as Val said, we're using all of the tools that we have at our disposal to secure the final and remaining payments. And in addition, you'll see an update to policy in the near future here around the disposal of obsolete equipment, which we use to govern this process. In the past, many companies do net 30 terms, things like that. It's very common. We had not, because we think that that also could be a potential barrier in the bid process for people to have to write the check before they actually take the equipment. There's just some cash flow things that happen from time to time, but we will ask you to adopt a policy change that would require that in this circumstance. It may limit the number of bids that we have in the future, but at the same time, we think it's the responsible step to respond to this. So I just want to thank Val and Nate Knudsen, who's our Director of Technology Services. Of course, everyone regrets this circumstance that we're in. We're angered by it, frankly, because we've had several other circumstances that this has worked out well, but we want to let the community know when we say something has gone well and then it doesn't go well, we want to tell you just the same as we did before.
Thank you. Board members, do you have a comment or question? Jeff?
Yeah, that's unfortunate that happened. I'm just wondering, if there was something about, whether it was like a theft by swindle or just a vendor that's just not paying the bills. So as far as statutes in school districts and things like that, what's your thought on that?
Our initial communication with our attorney is that it's likely considered misappropriation of public funds. But as we get into that, the threshold's different for varying levels under the law. And so it was originally 142 and now it's slightly less than that, but that will really be kind of up to our attorney to determine what the appropriate classification is.
Anyone else? Thank you, Val, for that update.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to item 6, which is our consent agenda. There were some personnel items in the table file added to that consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Thank you, Maggie.
Again.
Second, thank you, Ben. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Item 7, items for individual action, we have none tonight. And then our items for information, we have an enrollment report for March 2026.
On the screen here, you will see the enrollment report for this month. And on the screen, you will see the enrollment report for this month. And we go to the bottom and you'll see that we're down a few more students than we were last month. You do see some shift between the high school and the ALC. And then we also know that this is the time of year where we also do see some families begin to move. And so this is a pattern that is not unusual. We have seen some of this in the past, but you can see this is the current full-time only. This is what was in the budget projection. So we are negative 22 students compared to projection at this moment. We have seen this pattern a few times, and we will wait to see how it shakes out at the end of the year, but this is our monthly update. We're also committed to showing you the current class sizes at the elementary school, so you can see here the variation in class sizes across the district at each elementary school. And so this is the enrollment report for this month. Be happy to take any questions.
Oh, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Hillman? Okay, Corey?
Question about the high school and the ALC. I know you said there was some shift there. We lost 5 students at the high school, but it was about 60% increase at the ALC, 58 students. I see independent study is probably a big draw to the upper 2 classes. Do you have any understanding of what the 20 kids in 9th grade or the increase of 18 in 10th grade would be, or who they are, where they come from?
So typically, when you see 9th and 10th grade students, they may not be full-time at the ALC. They're likely doing credit recovery. So there's, if a
That
student.
early?
Yes, so one of the things that we're working through is trying to help students catch up on credits right in the wake of their, if they failed a course the first semester. So it's not uncommon to see that increase at this time of the year. So my perception, this is speculation, is that a significant portion of that would be students who need to make up a credit. We're trying to get that in real time. We know that it's easier to do that when you can do it right after, and we have a number of different systems that are governed by the ALC that allow students to be able to capture those credits back should they successfully complete the work that's required.
So in that scenario, would they count still in the high school and then be additional count in
Correct,
the ALC?
yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Maggie?
I believe we had kindergarten open houses recently. Do we know yet how enrollment numbers are looking for next year, kindergarten?
If we could know that this early, we would love life. So we continue to work on trying to have those kindergarten open houses as early as we reasonably can, trying to get families to commit and share that they are coming. We've been better about that over the last several years, but we still see quite a few final enrollments because we don't count you as enrolled until we have all of your paperwork. So I don't have an update for you right now. What I can tell you is that the projections that we have from some demographic studies and also the way that Val has projected, we do see this being a smaller kindergarten class next year. Hopefully that is boosted by open enrollment. That would not be captured as part of those projections. But at this point, we don't have a solid enough number to be able to share with you. We'll continue to politely and yet assertively ask families to complete that process so that we can count that you're here. And one of the challenges with that too is that sometimes at that age, families aren't exactly sure of what they're going to do. Am I gonna keep my student back one more year? Maybe we're gonna look at moving. Maybe I've applied to be part of Prairie Creek, and people may not get those answers at this point. So we do worry about also losing people who have told us that we've had that in the past where people will have completed the paperwork and then the first day of school, we're not sure where they are. So too early to tell, Maggie.
Anyone else? Amy?
I have a question about the elementary schools, now that we're a good share of the way through the year. And I'm looking and I'm seeing there's a handful of classrooms in the upper grades of the elementary schools that are in the high 20s for the number of students in them. And that was a difficult decision we made last year with our budget prioritization process. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on what is the sense of how that's playing out, and what are people saying?
So what I would say is I'd come back to what I say about class size in every circumstance, which is that it depends on the excuse me, it depends on the some water. It depends on the makeup of the class, right? As a teacher, I had large classes that felt very small. I also had small classes that felt very large based upon the makeup of those classes. What I would say is that I think that is similar here. I have heard a number of concerns from teachers and from families about larger class sizes than what we have been accustomed to. I want to say that our teachers are doing an exceptional job of trying to make sure that every student is known, valued, and loved. But that can become a little bit more difficult when we get into those upper 20s and 30s. Now, again, that was part of the decision that we made about making sure that we were as efficient as we could to keep as many programs. I think it's important to remind ourselves that we didn't eliminate programs even with $5.8 million worth of budget reductions. They were reduced or there were increased class sizes. The will of the community was to try to keep as many of those programs as we can. And so when we choose to do that, it has to come out somewhere in the budget, and that typically will manifest itself in larger class sizes. I want to compliment our teaching staff and our principals, support staff, who have done just an amazing job doing everything they can to adapt to those changing circumstances. We know that the class sizes that we are seeing this year are not all that different, right, from some neighboring districts in our studies and looking at class sizes across the region. I'm not going to look someone in the eye and say that it has been easy. It has been not. It's been difficult. And it does add extra work, right, to each teacher. If I am used to having 24 or 25 and I now have 27, 28, or 30, that's just that much more work that we have to do. So I'm not going to tell you that it has been gone swimmingly, but I think our teachers have done an exceptional job of adapting and responding to that circumstance. And I think that I would also just remind the community that we made some intentional choices with that so we could maintain quite a few high-quality programs that may have had to have been eliminated should we have chosen not to do that.
Plus, most of our class sizes are still, I would say, quite low.
This is true. Yep. And when you see, so for example, if you take any of the grade levels that have 27, 25, and 30, for example, that's a really tricky spot for an upper elementary grade level, because if you go to a fourth section in that scenario, now those class sizes are quite a bit below what we would like to have as an efficiency perspective. So that we're going to have some grade levels that are in that unfortunate circumstance. From time to time, you're going to see us add an additional section to a grade level like that to break it down even further than we would normally do, based upon what the profile of that particular grade level's needs are. There are other times where you're going to see a grade level that's going to be like this, and it works out okay. Not going to say it's spectacular, but it works out okay because of the grade level profile. These are the decisions that our really great building principals make. They're really looking at, what is the makeup of the class, what are the needs of those students, and how do we best use the resources that we have. We know that we're not getting additional money from the state this year. That is a foregone conclusion, right? We hope to get a little bit, right, to just stem some of the tide. We also know that we are continuing, despite all of the great work that we've done, to be very responsible with our resources. We know we're trying to outrun a math problem that is very difficult. 24% fewer births last year compared to 2010 within the district. This is a nationwide trend, and that math problem is going to be with us for a while. We're hopeful. We've heard some housing developments are in the works, right? But the math problem is still going to be with us. And so this is the challenge that we're going to continue to face in the next few years about how to put our resources to try to avoid situations like those class sizes that you asked about, Amy, to provide relief, for our teachers, which is a workload issue. And at the same time, how can we maintain all of the programs that are good for kids? And so that's that question that you will all continue to wrestle with in the next few years.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for that update. We also have a construction update, number 24. Would you like to let that stand or make some comments?
I'm going to let that stand because Val really did a lot of that in the construction update today.
Yes, you did. Thank you. All right. Anything else on that? All Right, then we'll move on to our future meetings. First, coming up Thursday, March 19th, in the gymnasium in this building, an operating levy renewal public hearing, 6 to 8 p.m. We hope to see a good turnout on that. Thursday, April 2nd, as scheduled, a board work session on the topic of later school start. Monday, April 6th, a special meeting to approve the bids for the Reimagine project. As scheduled also, April 6th, special meeting pertaining to our superintendent search. Monday, April 13th, a regular board meeting in this boardroom. April 16th, a special meeting pertaining to the search. April 24th, 25th, special board meeting pertaining to the search. April 27th, a regular school board meeting here in this boardroom, and then April 29th, another special meeting pertaining to the search. That is all the business that we have tonight. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Maggie. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.